Welcome, everybody. It's the Persian and the Greek, two crazy chicks who are going to talk today about Ukraine, Russia, and in essence, who's running our country, because Mr. Biden certainly isn't. Let me introduce my colleague, Mitra Raheb, Dr. Mitra Raheb, excuse me. She is an emeritus of the Middle East, she's been teaching at FIU, UM. Anything you want to add, Mitra? You do a lot of
From an expert in Asia,
expert in
Islamic world,
Asia. There you
the
go.
Islamic world of Asia. Yeah.
Great.
So,
I'm no expert. I'm just here because I like talking to Mitra.
well, thank you so
Okay,
much.
let's talk a little. Let's start again. Let's start
Yeah.
today regarding the interesting bits and pieces of what's been happening in Ukraine and Russia. We had yesterday, uh, before the Christmas holidays, speeches, interviews by Mr. Putin and Mr. Zelensky. Two, in my opinion, very differing views of how things are proceeding. It's been 2 years now. Let's be honest, too many have died. For
Yeah.
what? Mitra, why don't you start by telling me how the hell did we get into this situation?
Right. It's interesting. I think you have to go back to 2013, 2014, what most people saw as an American-backed coup, right? In order to remove the current leader of Ukraine at that time, in which the gentleman was removed from power because people protested. One of the reasons he was removed from power, the argument goes, was because, well, he was too close to Russia, right? And the Russians got very upset about that. They said the guy won democratically, right? But their argument was put aside, and the concept of what you considered a coup emerged significantly and quickly. Why? Well, because when you have Senator McCain going to Ukraine and say overthrow your government, that's a coup, right? And in the past 10 years, we have pretty much had that. But really, to go back, you have to go back to the collapse of the Soviet Empire, right? Remember, United States and NATO had told Russia that we're not going to expand NATO. We're not going to really come on your border. And by 2014, that was already there. NATO had expanded. NATO was already there. And so the Russians were feeling somewhat afraid, whether you like it or not. So when the coup emerged, right? When the coup emerged, the Russians still did not occupy, did not go in, especially when Donald Trump came in, right? There was an understanding. Look, just don't put NATO forces on my freaking border. They had an understanding. They had an agreement in 2022, I believe, or so. What you have is the United States very much with anti-Russian mentality pushed and pushed, right? Because for the past 10 years, they came up and basically trained NATO forces, right? So what did Mr. Putin do? He says, that's it. I'm going to go in, right? But even the first several months, you had
But he
President
didn't go in.
Macron.
He didn't go in under
Yeah,
Trump.
no, he didn't go in as per
Right,
troops. I understand.
right.
You're absolutely correct. Within the first several months, even President Macron of France says, let's go to the Minsk agreement. Let's work it out. But ironically, who didn't was the United States, was United Kingdom, right? So they didn't agree. They want to set this trap for the Russians to come in. And so eventually, the Russian went in, for the lack of a better term, right? But here was an interesting thing. Putin agreed, literally, they had with the French and the Ukrainians, just don't put NATO forces there because it's on my border. I have a right to be afraid, right? And he agreed. But apparently, what we see from the leaks that came out, Prime Minister Johnson, who was running for election, told um, Zelensky, no, you can't make a deal, have an election. So that's it. And now, 2 years later, you have what, 500,000, 700,000, 800,000 dead. I would say, I think about 25%, if I'm not mistaken, I'm not exactly clear on the number because it depends on the statistics, of Ukraine is gone, right? And whether you agree or disagree, the war has been lost politically for United States, Mr. Zelensky and their allies. And militarily, you can say Russia has lost, but if you understand the Russian mentality, they really haven't lost because they're not defeating Zelensky. They're defeating NATO.
They're
And
defeating the
so
West. I mean, Putin
they're
made it
defeating the
very,
West. You're
very
absolutely correct.
clear
You're
that
absolutely correct.
this is a war against the West and the West's intervention into their backyard, so to speak.
You're absolutely correct. You're
So
absolutely
so
correct.
so so now so now we have all these dead soldiers. The war seems to still not be ending. You and I have spoken about this. Why not do a Cyprus for God's sake? Here, you want to be
Right.
Ukrainian, live here. You want to be Russian, live here. Stop the killing. I have a feeling that Mr. Trump will forge some sort of a deal. This was quite evident to me when Putin was speaking that he
Yes.
was almost looking forward to uh, getting this thing done. Whereas, in my opinion, where Mr. Zelensky was speaking, he was going very combatant. And that was very strange to me because that was, in a way, a change of roles from almost 2 years ago.
Right. You're absolutely correct. I think I really recommend people, it's long, but listen or read both speeches. I think Mr. Putin realizes this war has already won. Yes, it has lost a lot of men, but it was able to devastate and alter the economic and political structure of Europe. And in many ways, the US, everybody in the West was gung ho at the beginning, right? But now people are fed up, whether it's in Germany, whether it's in France, whether it's in the United States. And so I think Mr. Putin realizes in many ways he has already won this war, right? The international community is not against Russia. Yes, you have 40 nations, 28 of them which are Europeans, who put one form or another sanctions on Russia. But there are 194 and 198. Russia's economic power is still there. You know, they're the top five producer for nickel, palladium, aluminum, right? Wheat. I believe 25 to 30% of Ukraine is gone. When I heard Mr. Zelensky's speech, I think it became clear to me he knows he has lost, but he doesn't want to admit it. So he's just going to just keep pushing for war and more and more just to cause damage, even though he knows he has lost. Because remember, there's been huge rumbling on Mr. Zelensky for the past year. He's not exactly a democratic leader. He abolished all opposition, shut down free press. There was no election, declared martial law, and imprisoned anyone who disagreed. So this isn't exactly Thomas Jefferson taking over. But right now, you are where you are. You are where you are. And the United States and the West no longer have the economic, military, or the political capability of going to war. You just don't have that right now.
I think also this came as a surprise for many in the West. I think that either they stupidly thought it was going to be over in a matter of weeks, or they figured they would be winning big time. It's interesting to me how Joe Biden didn't give the big guns to Ukraine from the get-go, but waited 2 years. That was very strange for me, where he could have perhaps changed the paradigm of the war. He didn't.
I don't think so.
Yeah.
For me, it wasn't strange because I think the intention of Biden and his staff was to create chaos, just to create chaos for the sake of chaos, but not to start a war. You're right, because if you recall beginning of the war, we've been saying for about a year, 3 months into the war, and we were saying, we had the same argument, you and I, just give it time. You're not fighting Russia. You're fighting a country that defeated, Hitler and Napoleon. Their mindset is longer. They allow them to come in, and they hit. So it's a different mindset. But
they're also a
where
very
you are
proud
now.
people. They're also very proud
Extremely
people.
proud.
And
Extremely proud.
this is something we spoke about, how perhaps if you go to Moscow or St. Pete or whatever, you see the young people saying, okay, enough war, whatever. But Russia is huge. It is humongous. And every single village out there is pro-Putin because they believe in their hearts and in their minds that Russia is back again and Russia is strong. And this is the difference, I think. I mean, you have to hand it to the Ukrainian army, who, God rest their little souls too, have been fighting a war. I don't even think half of them want to fight. And
I don't think so, because did you see it was last week, I believe it was in New York Times or New York Newsweek. I apologize. I don't know which one. that more than 100,000 soldiers have abandoned. How many
Yeah.
soldiers does that have? If you have 8, 9 million Ukrainian leaving,
No, no,
and
that's what I'm
so you
saying.
just,
No, that's
you
what I
know,
said. I said the
yeah,
Russians, I said the Russians seem
yeah,
to want
yeah,
to fight. The Ukrainians are tired. I mean, in essence, the Russians are tired too, but they've got bigger fish to fry, so to
yeah.
speak.
But it's
Um,
ironic because the leaders are the ones, the Ukrainians are tired, but the leader of Ukraine wants to go, keep
and
fighting
that's what he was saying in
because he
his
knows his
speech.
head is on the block.
I think it'll be over within a month after Trump takes over. I think they'll find some
If
sort of
not
a
sooner,
deal,
I
if
think
not
if not
sooner.
sooner,
Yeah, yeah,
but
if not
possibly
sooner.
sooner. There's no more path. The
Yeah.
question is not that. The war is already decided. The question becomes, I think, what are you willing to give up? Are you going to have, like we said for the past year, have a Cyprus, right? 25%, north and south, just what are you going to do about that? You've got to give some things to the Russians, huge, because it's a matter of image. I think if you go to the Russians and say, look, we're not going to put any NATO forces there. We put this, United Nations force, you know what I'm saying? So it's not worried about. And you keep the parts that are close to Russia, for the lack of a better term. I think he can go home and tell the soldiers and the people, okay, we finished the West. We have north of, whatever, Ukraine, and we don't have border. I think if you give them that, it's okay.
But don't
But
forget that Ukraine, don't forget that there are sections of Ukraine that are down south that also are pro-Russian.
yes,
So
yeah,
I'm
I
wondering,
understand. I
yeah, so
understand that.
I think however they quote unquote split it up, it'll be fascinating to see what kind of deal they come up with. But I think the deal has to be made. Certainly for not only just to stop the killing of also the all the innocent people, but I think the world is tired of it. And
Yeah.
just to go into a little section that we were going to talk about. We don't have a lot of time now. We've got about 3 more minutes in this segment, but the killing of this general,
Right.
your opinion, I believe, was that it had the signs of Mossad all over it. Is that what you're thinking?
He did. I think the style of the killing was that.
Yeah.
And I think if you listen to or read it, whichever you prefer, Mr. Putin, he made a veiled threat to Israel. Don't go into Syria. We know who did this because that's the style of killing that the Israelis would do. That's not the Ukrainian. That's not the necessarily Ukrainian army. They don't have that necessarily that way. I think that system was certainly an Israeli style of killing. So and after that killing, what happened? Putin came up and says, poof, poof, poof. And I think people need to realize Putin is very important, but the Russian military is still the most powerful. People tend to forget even Joseph Stalin was afraid of the Russian military. So I think the deal has to be made if it's not made already. Something makes me think the deal was made. That's why Putin was so calm, and that's why Zelensky was so upset because
Maybe.
United States can't. Yes, Mr. Biden is giving cash, but Europe can't afford it.
Right.
Europe, Western European powers are in verge of economic, social, political crisis that hasn't been seen for centuries. You have the collapse of the German government.
Well, not
You
centuries.
have the,
Half a century.
that's huge. That's
Yeah.
huge. You have the French government without a prime minister, and that's most likely the ultra right's going to win, right? Marie Le Pen, or certainly someone from the right. And so you have the two great powers, Germany and France of Western Europe, facing economic, military, and political crisis.
Well, as you saw, Olaf Scholz in Germany just got a no
Right.
confidence vote. The election will be set up for February. I'm willing to bet it's going to go very much, if not
To the right.
to the right, it's going to be much more pro-right. I think the issue we see now is that where Germany and France have lost a lot of their clout, you
Yes.
see Italy, especially Meloni, you
Right.
see Spain,
Yes.
see the southern countries who never ever wanted to have any deals or
Part of
problems
this.
with Ukraine and Russia and taking sides,
Yes.
et cetera, et cetera. They seem to be doing much better. But let's watch this space because what I find fascinating now, let's go quickly what's been going on with Israel, we've been watching that. I have to ask the question. It came out today that there is a huge cover up, that Joe Biden is
Yeah,
not making these decisions, that Joe
yeah.
Biden hasn't been making decisions since maybe a year and a half now.
I agree.
Um,
Yeah.
I think the world and the public saw it for themselves when he did the interview, the debate, excuse me, with Donald Trump.
Yeah.
But this has been going on for a while. So the question I have for everybody is really, who's running the country?
You have an excellent point because I have to tell you, last year when I was in France and you in Germany, last year when I went to France, you go to the little bakeries, you have your coffee and these older French people are speaking. And it was after Mr. Biden had visited France, and the gossip around there was he didn't even know what was going on. He couldn't hold on to himself. So for me, who is running the country has a wide connotation because if the people who are running the country come from a certain mindset that is not best of the not the best of the United States, but is best of what they think, we have a problem. If you look at the foreign policy in Middle East or even Russia, it's largely new conservatives, the same neocons who advocated for the war in Iraq, Libya, Syria, Afghanistan. They want to attack Iran now. These are the same people for 25 years ago during charge of the Biden administration now. So you have these people telling, running the United States, saying, hey, let's give permission to Ukraine to attack Russia in a hope of expanding the war. Let's give money to Russia. So for me, the connotation is huge. It's not just the fact we are involved in two major wars, one way or another, whether it's Middle East or whether it's Ukraine. And by the way, it doesn't have to be militarily. It could be economic as well as political. But for me, the question becomes, those people that are running, are they committing a crime? If you're doing something, you're not just lying to the American people, but if you're doing something that's not best for the country, but you think it's best for the country because of your own political beliefs or your own political background, there is a problem. So I think you're going to see when the administration leaves little leaks more and more who's running the country.
It's happening now. I mean, it's happening
It's
now.
happening in a way.
I think what's interesting is that if they can prove that the cover up was going on a lot longer than they
Yeah.
gave through, and I think I'm not sure if it's 100% sure. I think Jill Biden had a lot to
Yes,
do with it, with not
I think so.
really telling everybody the real way her husband really was. And it's a pity. I have to tell you honestly, on a more humane point of view,
Yes.
it's a pity. Joe Biden
Yeah.
was a good guy. I mean, in many ways, he
Yeah.
was a good guy. He got caught up. I think his legacy, unfortunately, after all these years being in Congress, etc., his
Yeah.
legacy will be two wars and a cover up. And that's a pity because you've
It
got
is. It
on the
is.
same side, you've got a Trump who's been indicted on X, Y, and Z, who's got Musk and Ramaswamy and all these guys, helping them
Yeah.
do Doge and everything.
Yeah.
But the problem is that Biden hasn't got a leg to stand on against Trump, because if he's found to be covering up his
Well, I
dementia or
don't
whatever,
honest. Yeah.
it's over, I think. And it's
I
a
think,
pity.
well, first of all, the election, I mean, Mr. President Trump is going to take over in about a excuse me, month anyway. But for me, that's not the issue. For me, the security of United States is the issue. The United States no longer exercises the economic, military, political power of the past, particularly for the past 25 years when the new conservatives came into every sector of the system, whether it was the intelligentsia, whether it was the education, whether it was the military. And if these were the ones, and I think many of them are part of Biden administration, you have a problem now because the United States as a whole is becoming weaker. And so for me, it's not about Trump. It's not about Biden. It's about who's going to protect this country and what's the best for this country. We were once a beacon of hope, the land of the free, in which the world looked towards our Lady Liberty. That is necessarily no longer the case. Thanks to social media, now people know about the coups. People know about how we try to overthrow the government. And worse, people see particularly in the past 2 years, one law for, Israel when it comes to Gaza and the Muslims, and one law for the Christians, Ukrainians. So I think Mr. Joe Biden's legacy and his staff would be genocide Joe. This will be an impact on the vice president. That is their legacy. That is their legacy.
Joe.
Yeah, that's what they call him, Genocide Joe. The press calls him that. So it's a terrible legacy. And I think it also questions the future of Vice President Harris. You know, I don't see a vice president coming back. I see him more like a George Bush vice president, right? George Bush the first, right? So
yeah, I have to say, my opinion is I think in many ways you're right, but I think we have three things going for us right now. And that is we have the top guys in regards to AI and technology. We really do. And people may hate them. People may hate them, but they are really
damn good.
When you look at the world over,
yes,
they are the leaders, and other countries such as Russia, such as China, et cetera, are copying. I mean, let's be honest. China got to where they were today because they copied every single thing they got.
Initially, yes, but now we copy China on something. So initially, yes, but now
they still the copyrights and everything, the trademark issues are still all there.
Well, that's because I'm talking about technology. Yeah,
I'm talking about that. But anyway, I think let's see. I think what is fascinating, I think this might also play into it, is the space race. I mean,
absolutely.
If we do Mars before anybody, we've already got the vehicles on Mars and everything.
Yeah. It's huge.
It's huge. And we've got, Bezos and Musk and even Virgin, what's the guy's name? Richard
the English
Branson.
Yes.
From, with Virgin Galactic or whatever the heck it's called.
Whatever that was,
this is cool. This is cool. Not to say that China and India, et cetera, aren't.
No, we understand. Thing. Yeah, I understand.
But I think this may save us, because what I think is fascinating now is, and you said it 100%, politically, militarily, and economically. I think another factor has to be taken, and that's technology. Those four factors.
Yeah, I see what you're saying. But for me, the issue I have with that is that politically, if we are not united, we are too tribal, we're done. You could have,
true.
That's the problem. You could have Thomas Jefferson come back. You could have Albert Einstein come back. You could have Abu Ali Sina come back. If we are so divided in this country that we are based on not what's best for this country, but our own personal belief, our own theological belief, our own political belief, our own tribe, we're not going to make it. We're not going to make it. So I think that is why I would really like to know what will happen with the administration. Who was running other than Joe Biden? It comes to foreign policy, is it the neocons who had pushed for war for the past 25 years? And if it's yes, what's going to happen to them? Right. Are they going to be punished?
Exactly.
Or are they going to get away with it because of politicization? I don't know.
I don't know either. But if it has been Mr. Blinken making all the decisions, then we see the curve, because he's pro-Israel, he's anti-Muslim, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And he goes in to be the peace talker, and he's just creating more havoc in a way. And I agree with you. I think that if these things come out more and more, I mean, let's be honest, you like her, you don't like her, I don't care. Kamala Harris had 3 months to run for office. If Biden had, let's just say, all things considered, if Biden had stepped down a year before, we would have had a proper primary. We would have picked somebody. Maybe the Democrats would have had a chance. In essence, what they did,
I don't disagree.
They hurried it along, and they got themselves into a big fat pickle. And at the end, Mr. Trump and his gang won the trifecta.
I think you're absolutely correct. Had he stepped aside, I think 2 years ago, they should have reminded Mr. Biden, you said you were a transitory president. And at the end, when you just pushed her through, and by the way, this was a huge backlash against the traditional media. The New York Times, the Washington Post, CNN, Fox, all of them. It doesn't matter which side you're on, because most people went on their phone, listened to podcasts, read Instagram, went on Twitter. So they were like the traditional press that was pushing for all of this, regardless of which side you are, is no longer respected. or is no longer trusted. They could only be heard if they go to Instagram, in which people could be heard. They only could be heard if they go to Twitter or they have their own podcast. Look what happened. Just I think two people left from CNN yesterday. One person's left from the Fox. I think you're beginning to see a shift, but we are where we are right now. But I cannot help but wonder if the assertions are correct and somebody else has been running the country. Not just what is the ramification of lying to the American people means, but what is the ramification of punishment? In other words, are those people who run the country that pretty much brought us into a war with Russia almost, are they going to be punished? Or are they going to get away with it because, oh, well, they're pro this or they're pro that. They didn't mean to. I think United States, and this is not isolationism, I think it is time for United States to look inward, fix itself because it goes out. It's the same things the Chinese did, like the Iranians with Syria. They saw a problem, pulled back, regrouped, they're coming back. Same thing here. Learn from China. When China's empire was falling, they went inward, strengthened themselves, and come out. We cannot have a strong nation if we are internally imploding. The world needs the United States. But Absolutely. Right now, nobody wants United States, and nobody needs it because of social media and this that has told the truth about what we have done. So we need to go internally and fix ourselves.
We have to turn a new page.
This is not isolationist.
We have to turn a new page. And I think that
you have no choice.
We have to, it's going to be do or die kind of thing, because if not, the other countries will eat our lunch. I mean, honestly.
We are a testimony. Yeah, absolutely. I always say, we have all faults. We're an empire. We lie, we cheat, we rape, we steal. Okay. That's what empires do. The difference is that's how you become an empire. Initially, you're wonderful. It's like beginning of the marriage. You're wonderful. Within a year, the real guy comes up, if not 6 months, right?
Or the real girl.
It's the girl, whatever. I apologize. Right. Let's be fair, right? And it's the same thing. The difference is in the past, they didn't have this. It wasn't recorded. People didn't see. But now everything we do, it's seen and heard, and people know about all the things we did, which they did not know before. So that has weakened us tremendously. The world is telling us, with the exception of maybe 2 dozens, that's it. We need you, but not because of us, because of themselves. It is time for us, I think, to pull back and say, we're honored. We think it's wonderful that you need us, but we're sick ourselves. Yeah. We have to take care of ourselves so we can help you. And if those nations want Russia, want China, want Iran, okay, it's yours. Goodbye, salam, shalom, whatever you want. It's yours. But we are here if you ever need us, right? Let them come to us by their choice. Because
and not let us always go to
China
them.
And Russia ain't great.
Yeah. No, let's see what happens. I mean, we start the new year with a new administration. Let's see what he's going to do. I mean, let's see. And let's see. I mean, he's already been starting to be a bit of a bully. I think everybody knows he's just being a bully. But let's see.
I think the American people knew about his, and the American people knew what they were voting for.
Absolutely.
And that was voting against Biden and the staff. And that's the problem. Yeah. For the past 4 elections, it's not about the person you want. It's about the person you don't want.
Exactly.
And add to that economic, military, political decline in this country and internal tribalization, this country is in trouble. We have to go internally to help ourselves.
All right.
We are sick internally and we need to heal. So
I agree. All right. So that's the podcast today with 2 crazy chicks from Persia and from Greece talking about Ukraine, Russia, and the Biden cover-up. And we'll be back next week after the Christmas holidays for something else that's going to happen in the news, I'm sure. So watch this space. Thank you, Mitra. Have a happy holiday, Merry Christmas,
Happy holidays.
All right. Thank you.
Happy holidays, everyone.
All right. Bye.
Bye-bye.